Hi there. Last time you saw me being out with the kayak, you saw that this holder here broke. So I want to do something better. So my plan here is actually to rebuild this in an improved version 2. And I will need some plywood to build from that I got over here. I will need some material for a holder. I'll leave some excess. As I'm going on a holiday trip, I cut out a smaller piece of material. On location, I draw the shape of the parts I need for the build. I use the old beam holder as a mold and cut out the shape. With a minimalistic set of tools. A jigsaw is necessary for the bend shapes. Some bendings can be drawn from other objects. A handsaw or other straight cutting saw will be useful, because a jigsaw could also cut reasonably straight, but it's unnecessarily noisy and less precise. A measuring tool and a pencil, as well as a set square, are added to the list. When I have cut out the material, I dry fit the pieces. For this holder to not break, I need to change a few things. I will make the side supports longer and add a wide top plate. This will make the upper part of the construction much more rigid and strengthen the angle between the beams and the mast. All needs to be covered with glass and epoxy. Epoxy protects the wood from the water and moisture, and the glass makes the surface incredibly strong. Here I use a simple biaxial 300 gram per square meter glass. Pre-wetting all bounding surfaces with epoxy before putting the parts together. I only have one clamp at this location, but masking tape can be used as a stand-in for some things. Without proper tools, it's hard to shape a fillet. With a reasonable fillet, it is easy to get the glass to take a 90-degree bend. When I have got the glass in place, I can add laminating epoxy on top of the lightweight epoxy fillet filler. Cutting up the turns helps the glass adhere to the sharp bend. The joints are strengthened by filling the gaps and adding glass over the surface. The back support for the mast will probably be the new weak spot, but that is a good place of failure, as that will result in a controlled mast lowering in the forward direction. Back home in the garage again, I try a new addition to the concept. I want to be able to change the angle of the pontoons. So I made this holder with a wider gap for different beam directions. The beam will still be fastened with a bolt, but I don't think I need to be able to remove the beam at sea. The hole for the bolt needs to be waterproofed. So I prepare for a hole in the hole. The connection with the kayak needs to be strengthened. I will put glass on all surfaces. To be conservative on the epoxy consumption, I try to have several areas going on the same time. Excess epoxy can be wiped off with some toilet paper. The top fill drops will need to be sanded back. So you do not want to add too much. Here I solve a holding problem. With 3 clamps I can hold the connector in place while I glass it. I use up the excess epoxy on less important surfaces that I still want to strengthen. Also, the kayak connector will need waterproofed holes. Thus I drill oversized 10mm holes for an 8mm bolt. These edges does suck a lot of epoxy, thus I need to backfill the area several times. Now I add the top plates for the beams. All end wood sucks a lot of epoxy, so this needs to be backfilled as well. Later I will backfill any voids and also strengthen the glass, so it's not critical to leave excess epoxy in the gap. I can clamp in place to get a good alignment on one side and sand the other side flat. Bending glass 90 degrees is not easy. It cures best flat down, but with clamps you can get it to cure in place vertical and also in 90 degrees bends. Bending over inside corners requires special pressure tools. With a piece of plastic and wood I can clamp a 90 degrees bend and continue working on the other side. Here I bend the glass over a ladder construction using clamps. Afterwards it's just to clean cut the edges and proceed. Now I can drill the final 8mm hole in the bottom plate and prepare for the mast holding bolt. Here I make a mistake and have to move the hole. With some glass I glue the mast holding bolt in place. Getting closer to the end. These pieces will help connect the beam holder with the kayak holder. They will of course also need to be glassed in, and oversized holes are drilled. Fill with cut glass and thicken epoxy. That needs to be stuffed into the hole. More 90-degree bending of glass. That is clamped in place. I think this beam holder is ready for a test ride before I will finalize it with some paint. Why not subscribe and join me then?